Hi, I'm Martin from Readsy, and today I want to talk about a publishing term that you may have heard of if you're serious about writing fiction, and that is upmarket fiction. So, in the trade publishing world, there are two ends of the fiction spectrum. There's literary fiction and there's commercial fiction. Literary fiction tends to prioritize deep thematic exploration, complex characters, and well-crafted prose. By its very nature, it's often intended to be challenging, but ultimately rewarding for readers who are able to peel back all the layers. Commercial fiction, on the other hand, will tend to be more accessible, prioritizing plot and well-crafted hooks. They're the kind of books that will keep you up all night, turning pages with its genre-driven stories. Now, these terms aren't genres in themselves, but in a sense, you can use them as modifiers for genres. You can have commercial science fiction, like Andy Weir's Project Hail Mary, which is fun, accessible, propulsive, and set in the deep recesses of space. Then you have something like Stanisław Lem's Solaris, which is meditative, philosophical, with gorgeous prose, also set in the deep recesses of space. Both are works of science fiction. You'll find both in the science fiction fantasy section of your local bookshop, though they appeal to very different readers and will be marketed in very different ways. And then, of course, there's upmarket fiction, which sits smack bang in the middle of commercial and literary fiction. They are works of literary quality with language and depth of characters that can hold up to discussion and examination, while also possessing a strong narrative drive that can appeal and satisfy a wider readership. When done well, it can blend the best of both worlds and potentially set up the author, you in this case, with a potential crossover hit. Sometimes you'll hear the term book club fiction. It's another marketing term and it doesn't always overlap, but I think it is a useful way to think about upmarket fiction. It's a piece of work that gives you a lot to talk about afterwards in terms of themes and topics and ideas, while also being something that your cousin, who hasn't maybe read a book since the Goosebumps series, might be able to enjoy and discuss. So, now that we have a broad idea what upmarket fiction is and where it lives on the publishing landscape, let's dive into the things that make it upmarket, with a few good examples thrown in. 1. An engaging hook. Like commercial fiction, upmarket books tend to have premises that you can sum up in one-sentence elevator pitches. Something that can instantly pique a reader's interest. One of my litmus tests for literary fiction is that when someone asks you what the book is about, you'll tend to lead with the fact that it's won some awards. Think of John Kennedy Toole's A Confederacy of Dunces, a really funny American novel that I recommend to a lot of readers. But how would I describe it? Well, it's about a 30-something overweight misanthrope who lives with his mother in New Orleans as he gets into scrapes and tries to find employment. Doesn't really have that kind of hook that can get readers quickly stuck. But did I mention that it won the Pulitzer? A good example of an upmarket book centering on a misanthrope would be the Swedish novel A Man Called Ove. I would describe that book as about a grumpy widower who has given up on life and plans to end it. But every attempt is interrupted by the messy, noisy people who keep moving into his orbit. Will he go through with his plan, or will he find himself reluctantly pulled into an unexpected new community? Okay, it's a bit longer than I said it should be, but you see what I mean. It's a story with immediate stakes. He wants to off himself, and we get a sense for the shape that the story will take, as well as the heartwarming tone. When the readers read the blurb, they know first and foremost that this is going to be an entertaining read. If you're still here, consider hitting the like button and subscribing to this channel for more stuff like this. 2. Literary quality prose. I'm not saying that commercial fiction has language that's purely functional. She said this, he pushed that, they kissed passionately, the transmogrifier hummed menacingly. In upmarket fiction, you're more likely to see instances of striking imagery and unexpected phrases. It's filled with that thing that readers often like to call gorgeous prose. Gabrielle Zevin's bestseller Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow centers around two friends who start a video game company. And in this passage, we are invited into a game that they are developing together. Below, a checkerboard of country life. A pair of Jersey cows graze in a lavender field, tails swatting at imaginary flies. A woman in a chambray dress rides a bicycle over a stone bridge. She hums the second movement of Beethoven's Emperor Concerto, and as she passes, a man in a Breton cap begins whistling the tune. From a hive you cannot see, the susurrus of bees. In the valley below the bridge, an ink-haired boy feeds a sugar cube to a horse with a wild look in her eyes. A grove of apple trees waits patiently for fall. Now, there are plenty of highbrow literary techniques at work, fun, unusual turns of phrases, a checkerboard of country life, tails swatting at imaginary flies, an ink-haired boy. All these are great at evoking images in the reader's mind. And then we have some highbrow references. Do I know what Beethoven's Emperor Concerto sounds like? No. Do I know what a susurrus is? From context clues, maybe? But I think that's kind of the point. We're being shown that the game they're creating isn't just a bit of fun. It's art, it's high art, and it's important that it's something that we, the reader, buy into, that they're sacrificing everything for something that's greater than themselves. Now, I think this gives us a moment to talk about the idea of beautiful prose. The thing I see with a lot of good writers with great intentions is this desire to show that they are good, legitimate writers, that they are capable of writing poetry. And often this manifests itself right at the beginning of every single new scene and chapter, where we open on a location, and then we are treated to gorgeous descriptions of the grass, the trees, the architecture, the quality of the sunlight, the porcelain skin of the protagonist ensconced in mink fur, before we go on a tangent talking about the history of the North American fur trapping trade. The trouble is, what we perceive as the hallmarks of great writing will often slow a story down when even the most professorial types just kind of want us to get on with the story. Sally Rooney's writing is the opposite of ornate. It's spare, but it's still unconventional and experimental. She doesn't use quote marks, and the sentences tend to be shorter than your average sentence. But again, I think this is with a purpose that serves the story. In a way, she might be trying to chip away at the distance between what characters think and what they say. It also creates a distinct rhythm. Any piece of punctuation you put on the page acts in some way as a bit of a road bump to slow things down. By stripping the quote marks away, she creates a sort of rhythm that we're not really used to. It's a small change that's hard to perceive, but over pages and pages and chapters, this all adds up into a very distinct voice that you really can't shake. So whenever you find yourself doing something out of the ordinary, always ask yourself, why am I doing this? What is the effect on my intended reader, and will it alienate them? Okay, so if upmarket fiction isn't about writing pages of description or raging against the Chicago Manual of Style, then what is it about? 3. Character-driven narratives. So this is another broad statement, but commercial fiction is usually what's described as plot-driven. That doesn't mean that commercial novels don't have great characters. That is a given for all good writing. But the main promise of a plot-driven novel is that something exciting is going to happen next. Will a bomb go off? Will they catch the killer? Will the couple end up married in the end? The Da Vinci Code isn't about the rich interior life of symbologist Robert Langdon. It's about mysteries and puzzles and revelations. Upmarket fiction, on the other hand, is often more interested in how a character changes. In a way, the plot exists to reveal and challenge the character, rather than the other way around. Gail Honeyman's best-selling debut, Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine, is about a woman who lives alone. She eats the same meals every day, she says exactly what's on her mind, and she spends her weekends with her crosswords, drinking 2 liters of vodka. She is, in her own words, completely fine. And the questions that drive the book aren't plotty. They're not, will she get a promotion? Will she be able to put together the Christmas party in time? What we as the reader want to know is, how did she get to be this way? And what happens when she is slowly, accidentally drawn back into human connection? But of course, exciting stuff can happen in upmarket fiction. Rebecca Kwang's Yellowface has a mass-market hook that's as compelling as any thriller. A struggling writer, consumed by envy, steals her late friend's manuscript and passes it off as her own. But how the novel unravels is less interested in the machinations of how a criminal tries to not get caught, and more interested in what it's like for our protagonist to live as a full-time fraud. 4. Accessible themes. Theme is another one of those slippery topics that's hard to define, but I like to think of it as what the story is really about underneath it all. What it's trying to say about the human condition and the world around us. In literary fiction, it's not unusual for a novel to explore complex topics or to examine an interconnected network of themes. Never Let Me Go, on the surface, is about a group of friends at a quite strange boarding school, but underneath it dives into ideas of mortality and free will and what it means to live a full life when your fate is sealed. Some heavy stuff that your readers may ponder long after the final chapter. Commercial fiction will also deal with themes, but they usually deliver a clear emotional payoff rather than inviting any deeper philosophical discussion. The Hunger Games is about survival, resistance, and injustice, all important topics and no less tied to the human condition, but the message is usually writ large and avoids ambiguity. Oppression bad, courage good, standing up for your beliefs excellent. If this were Goldilocks, then upmarket fiction would be the baby bear of the piece. concise, themes that are clear enough for most readers to grasp and rich enough to fuel some afterthought. That goes back to the whole book club fiction thing. It's the type of book that can drive a discussion amongst a wide group of readers. So why should you care about this term, upmarket? If bookshops are going to shelve all romance together and all science fiction together, why does it matter whether it's upmarket or not? As we said, it all comes down to how your book will be marketed, which is a massive consideration when you come to pitching it to agents and editors and readers. Is this the sort of book that may be submitted for price consideration? The Booker Prize has a long history of celebrating books that I would consider upmarket fiction. Life of Pi and Atonement, these are books that have proven to be bestsellers while being lauded for weighty ideas and characters, and in the case of these two, have plots that are propulsive enough to be adapted to blockbuster films. Is this the sort of book that celebrity tastemakers Oprah Winfrey and Reese Witherspoon might consider for their book club? And accordingly, if this is a space that you know you are aiming for, it could shape how you decide to revise your manuscript, leaning in perhaps to more experimental aspects of your work without sacrificing narrative momentum. If you are writing something that is quite literary, you may want to consider what you could do to make it a bit more commercial. If that's not your goal, then that's fine. If you publish a book that's meant to be high art and you wonder 6 months down the line why it hasn't reached a wider audience, then you may already have the answer. But in the end, remembering that while literary, commercial, upmarket, book club fiction are all marketing terms, they are indications of who might buy your book. So when you're writing and editing, think hard about how you can best break through to those readers, whether they're poets and PhDs or high schoolers and truckers. If you're not sure where your book fits into the spectrum, you can always ask for a professional opinion. Readsy has over 2,400 editors with experience in just about every genre you can imagine. You can reach out to them on our marketplace for a full developmental edit, or just get them to read your draft and provide a practical editorial assessment. If you found this useful, remember to like this video and smash the subscribe button. I've been Martin from Readsy, and I'll see you on the shelves.